listen to them.
We're just going to get situated for a second, talk amongst yourselves. We also have to put our faces on really quick. My body napkins. Jacqui and Olivia. Okay, can everybody hear? Quiet response. People who could hear said yes. Okay. Whew. All right. We already got the intro, so this is Olivia Brownlee, and I'm Jacqui Sandor. We're both folk musicians. The songs we're singing for you tonight have all been collected in different ways. Olivia and I love the same stuff, the intertwine of history and art, but we've come at it kind of in different ways. I'm more of like a reader and a researcher and an archivist, and Olivia is a community organizer. Interviewer. Yeah. So we put out our separate ways and came back in and each brought a bunch of songs, and we landed on 4 each to share with you tonight, which are all in front of you for various reasons, and we'll kind of go through that. But the topic that we stuck to was waters and lands of Washington State, as much as we can say that. Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that at first we felt a little bit guilty about was that some of these songs were written relatively recently. But then we thought about it and we're like, well, this song maybe was written 10 or 12 years ago, but it's about an experience that a 70-year-old man had in 1953. And it was with a person who was 90 years old at the time, who was talking about his lifetime. So between this complex relationship that art has with fact is something that is very, very interesting to both Jacqui and myself. And we're both original artists as well. We write songs that explore these complex stories that go back anywhere from 2 years ago to 200 years ago. So it was a complicated project, and I'm really glad that we got to do it. And the limitations that we set for ourselves, it has to be from Washington, or at least sharing water or land with Washington, or language. years, it has to be locally written. Like, these were pretty, like, narrow margins. So it's a really interesting project, and we got to connect with some very beautiful people along the way. Some of these folk musicians are still alive, and we connected with them personally. Yeah, we're excited to share.
Yeah. All right. Okay. I should say the lyrics are all in front of you. This was already said, but there are QR codes on your tables as well. I would highly recommend grabbing that, because even if you have the paper copy, there are links in the online version that take you to people's websites, or if you want to hear the original songs or anything like that. So make sure you grab that before the end of the day, and that will just be available online. You can always go back and look at it until I delete it out of my Google Drive. So the first song we're going to do, and the reason we have all the lyrics on the table is because we want you all to sing with us.
Yeah, there are a couple of ground rules with singing along at public sing-alongs. One is, if you feel like you're singing the wrong note, sing louder, because you might be singing a harmony. So there's one.
That's a trick I use all the time. Yeah, and we're going to be pretty lenient on like helping you guys out here, and if you don't want to sing, obviously we're not going to like bug you, but I hope that you all feel inspired to sing.
And if the print is too small, go ahead and just hum along. That is also adding to the vibe and the noise. And if y'all are sitting and you want to, like, we're not using our chairs over at this table here if you want to come sit in our seats. Cool.
Okay, so the first song we're going to just kind of do a little history and then the song, and the person leading the singing is probably the one who brought the song talking history, so just so you know, if you were curious. So here's the first one. This is Roll On Columbia. So Roll On Columbia was written by Woody Guthrie in 1941. He was hired by the Bonneville Power Administration to document the building of the Grand Coulee Dam out in Meade, Washington. They were trying to make it fun, Hey farmers, Woody Guthrie's on your side. We're going to build this dam, by the way. So he wrote 26 songs in 30 days, and there's actually a book. There's a link in the notes if you want to check that out. Many of these songs have become classics. This is one of them. This actually has become our state folk song officially in 1987. And it's probably the best known Pacific Northwest song sung around the world. In Woody's words about his experience: I saw the Columbia River and the big Grand Coulee Dam from just about every cliff, mountain, tree, and post from which it can be seen. I made up 26 songs about the Columbia and about the dam and about the men, and these songs were recorded by the Department of Interior, Bonneville Power Administration out of Portland. The records were played at all sorts and sizes of meetings where people brought bonds to bring the power lines over the fields and hills to their own little places, electricity to milk the cows, kiss the maid, shoe the old mare, light up the saloon, the chili joint window, the schools and churches along the way, to run the factories, turning out manganese, chrome, bauxite, aluminum, and steel. And that was from the book California to the New York Island, edited by Erwin Silver, who was an archivist also. So the chorus for this one is really fun. This might be just too loud. That's pretty loud. Is it pretty loud? Is that one or two? That's two. The words are really hard. It's roll on, Columbia, roll on. Roll on, Columbia, roll on. And then it gets a little tricky, but it's written down there if you need to see it. Your power is turning our darkness to dawn. So roll on, Columbia, roll on.
Or you just sing la 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 la.
So the first one is roll on, Columbia, roll on. So let's do that together, ready? Roll on, Columbia, roll on. Beautiful. Okay, and then it's roll on, Columbia, roll on. That one again. Roll on, Columbia, roll on. Your power is turning our darkness to dawn. Your power is turning our darkness few verses in this that didn't age so nicely. Feel free to look them up.
That is a really interesting calling, I feel like, as a songwriter and a folk musician that I'll talk about later. But which songs is it responsible of me to keep off the shelf until certain things change? But for now, we're going to do a song by a man named Utah Phillips, much less better known as Bruce Phillips. He died in 2008, but before he did, he spent a lot of time after he decided to stay out of, more serious trouble. He got into like the fun kind of trouble by riding the rails in the tradition of the tramps and hobos of the itinerant working phase of America. So he also did a lot of work for the Wobblies and for labor unions, writing songs and leading protests, and in general being just a really hot character. And I like to talk about things like hobos and and some other stuff that we'll touch later on in the program, because they don't really make it into the history books as much. But they're not just important stories, really interesting. And these are the sorts of characters who found themselves outdoors most of their lives. There's a certain freedom that comes with deciding to travel for work and work for travel. And you learn a lot about yourself, you learn a lot about how to survive in different kinds of wildernesses, including urban ones. And this song is called Hood River Roll On. And it's actually the more, I thought it was beautiful the first time I heard it. And then I listened to it more and more, and I was like, oh my goodness. And after doing some reading and researching, I was like, this is a eulogy. He was friends with a famous hobo named Hood River Blackie, who made a lot of trips to the Hood River area on the trains until the trains stopped running there. And then he got what is called a rubber tramp, which is anything with rubber wheels like a car or a truck, and kept rolling around. And he was one of the founders of the Hobo Museum in Britt, Iowa, and in general considered himself a record keeper of these hobo stories and poems and songs. And Utah Phillips said, and he cast them across the country kind of like dried leaves for songwriters like me to find. And I actually reached out to Utah Phillips' son, Duncan, who, because I wanted to buy his songbook. And Duncan, I was like, Duncan, do you have any stories about this song that you know? He's like, really? This is one of my favorites as well. And Hood River Blackie was actually one of the first people that my dad ran into in his travels. And he was the one who pointed out that he rolled up his bedroll wrong. And he could cause a problem for him. And that's how they became friends. But it also bears mentioning that Phillips, who was widely acclaimed across the nation as a folk singer and storyteller, he hosted the Expo 74 Folk Life exhibit in Spokane. And lived here for some time, actually. And developed quite a following. His songs were performed and recorded by the likes of Emily Harris, Waylon Jennings, Joan Baez, plenty of others. Yeah, better teach it to me now. Talk so much about it. It goes like this. Here's the chorus part. Hood River, roll on. There's so much to remember. The old times are gone. Hood River, roll on. They'll come around enough that you'll catch on to it. But in the meantime, like, hum it. Rusty pad bubble green kid remembers the old man's advice, shakes out his bedroll and rolls it up nice. To the river roll on, there's so much to remember. The old times are gone, the river roll on. Well, the box rumbles up on a black cinder grave. Some tumble inside while the others just wait, till scattered by smoke or the crunch of the shack. Well, when no one looks up, no, and no one looks back, the river roll on. There's so much to remember. The old times are gone, the river roll on. May your long apple valley stay green through the fall, and your magic white mountain watch over us all. Lead your old apple knockers in out of the snow. Let your rubber tramps ride where the trains never go. The river roll on, there's so much to remember. The old times are gone, the river roll on, the river roll on. There's so much to remember. The old times are gone, the river roll on. Thanks. It's hard for me to, that my mom says, some songs have more moisture in them than others. It's hard for me to get the good out without crying.
This next song, oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, but the very front page of the packet is a map of where kind of generally some of the songs came from. I say generally because, like, this one very clearly came from Westport. It was a story that happened in Westport, Washington. But like Hood River Blackie, for example, when I pinned it in Spokane because Utah Phillips is in Spokane, but Hood River Blackie lives in High River and it's on the rails, and you can't put pins on all the railroad tracks. So, but the notes are on there too if you want to see. Anyway, this next song, so Bob Nelson, I want to talk about him really quickly. He is the University of Washington folk music archivist, and he is still alive in Edmond, Washington. It is not Edmonds, it is Everett. I don't know why. This says Edmonds, I think yours says Everett. I hope yours says Everett. I hope it does. Okay, he's in Everett, Washington, and he's probably the most storied alive folk musician around. I mean, he's worked with Pete Seeger and Melvina Reynolds and all that. So I was, over the pandemic, doing some archive work with him and just kind of studying the archivist, basically. And he played this song for me. It's called The Old Fisherman. This is a great example of what Olivia was talking about earlier with time kind of being wibbly, wobbly, big folk music. So this song is only 13 years old, but in writing. But the incident happened in 1953, and the end of the incident happened a few years later than that. But the incident takes place, and it's about a man who wants to have the same fate as his grandfather and his father. So, though the song is only 13 years old, it's really like 150 years old. It's got all this history to it. And that's kind of the cool thing about art and history, is there's just this, I mean, you can write a song today about something that happened 300 years ago. So, anyway.
I call it making legends of facts.
Yes. This one, the chorus, it's pretty sad. This is
Don't tell them how to feel.
You know what? I won't. Maybe you'll be really excited. I think this, my father just passed, and he was a fisherman. And I understand this story is about a fisherman who went out to, he wants to die on this lake, right? So,
What's the name of the song?
The song is called The Old Fisherman.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's Bob Nelson himself on the back. Yeah. So, yeah, anyway. Yeah, you can read his own words the rest of this. I'm going to go ahead and start it. Some men must follow the sea. Some men can stay on the land. Their choices were made before they were born. They all do the best that they can. If you work on the land, you know where you stand. If you work, you earn and you slave. But those brave men who worked on the sea, they work with one foot in the grave. I watched the old man stumble along. His two canes led the way. He walked down the dock and came to the rail, saying, "How are you today?" He spoke in Finn, and I understood. I was standing on his boat. And here was the man who knew the sea like no one else afloat. So here's to those that are dead and gone, those men that follow the sea. Their ranks are thin, but they do it again. Those fins that follow the sea, my boys, fins that follow the sea. Beautiful. He said, "My father died at sea. My father's father did too. I fish these waters, my time is short, and I know what I must do." He asked me to help him climb the rail, so on his deck he could stand. I need to feel the sea again. I must not die on land. So here's to those who are dead and gone, those men who follow the sea. Their ranks are thin, but they do it again. Those fins that follow the sea, my boys, fins that follow the sea. He'd survived the storm of 36, where 16 others had died. He led his friends through the pounding surf, those 5 who did survive. But now his years had crippled him. He knew his time was near. He begged me to take him across the bar. I could see he had no fear. So here's to those who are dead and gone, those men who follow the sea. Their ranks are thin, but they do it again. Those fins that follow the sea, my boys, those fins that follow the sea. We're wondering about Papa Carey's fate eventually in real life. Well, here it is. Papa Carey saw his end, just as his father
problematic in the lyrics themselves, maybe not. It's more the history of the song and the thing that inspired it. And I'm in a class of folks who, you know, if a brothel was run by the ladies, I think that's hip. If it was run by a feller who was profiting off of everybody else's work, I think that's a little less hip. That's a very polite way to say that. Yeah, I gotta be diplomatic in today's world.
I think there were quite a few hits.
There were many that can be probably. Anyway, this is a song that was inspired by a brothel in Seattle called Illicky. It was also called the Madhouse and the Sawdust Pile. At the time, there were about 600 residents of Seattle, and 500 of them were men. So the ratio of gender was pretty intense. So this fellow named Mr. Cannell was like, I see a way to capitalize on this situation. And he enlisted a lot of Native American ladies to work at Illicky. However, that's not really what I'd prefer to talk about for this song, for this time. Illicky itself is a Chinook word. It's an ancient Chinook word. And it has to do with belonging to the land in a way that I feel like as descendants of colonials and colonials themselves, like just this long legacy of conquest, we have a harder time, I think, connecting to land. Or at least I do, just trying to figure out where I come from, where my ancestors come from. It's such a complicated process. But every now and again, I set foot on a place where I'm like, oh man, I get to be of this place. Even if I'm only here for a moment, I get to belong to it if it will have me. So I think that the word Illicky kind of captures that for me. And what was interesting about Seattle at this time was that the Chinook and the native peoples of that area, they were master traders. They were so good at negotiating and trading, and a lot of English and French were around at the time as well, and they were like, well, let's do fur, let's do lumber, let's just find all the things that we can trade. And especially the matriarchs in the tribes, they were like master negotiators. And they developed a jargon. They developed their own kind of pidgin language called Chinook Wawa, or Chinook jargon, which there is a club of people who are keeping that language alive today. And this is where I was telling Jacqui, I was like, I know how to research, I just don't know how to quit. every direction you go, there's so much interesting things to know. Like, now I want to learn Chinook jargon.
You learn a little bit Chinook jargon today.
Yeah, there's some jargon in here. And we included the what are the words? Interpretations in parentheses. So yeah, this is definitely a bawdy drinking song. And it's not one of these kind of drinking songs, it's one of these kind of drinking songs. So feel free to bang the table or stomp your foot or whatever the spirit leads. And it kind of goes like this. You'll hear it at the end of every verse. It goes, row boys, row, let's travel to the place they call Seattle. And then you have to shout this part. That's the place to have a spree. Try that. That's the place to have a spree. Seattle, Illicky. All right, you got it. Ready? Let's try that together. Row, boys, row, let's travel
sung throughout logging sites in the Pacific Northwest. That's where it came from. I just kind of put the pin in East Lewis County because I know there was a big logging community there, but it literally could have been saying Coeur d'Alene or North, or wherever they were logging, they would have sung this song. And it was most famously sung by Odetta, the Weavers, and Johnny Cash, so you might have heard one of them do it. It was written by a man named James Stevens, who is a transient logger and a student of folklore. He was enamored with the story of Paul Bunyan that was told in logging camps, and he actually went on to write a book called Paul Bunyan, which then made that legend an international story. So he's the reason for that, and this is the second most famous thing he ever wrote, which is the song called The Frozen Logger, which is sung all around the world. The logger, as a person, has a reputation for being stronger, faster, more agile, and just plain bigger than other humans. There is a line in this song where a vertebrae is broken and a jaw is broken, but it's meant to be humorous, like, haha, the logger doesn't know his own strength. So I was keeping that in mind for that. Yeah, I think that's a good enough introduction here. There is no chorus on this one, so feel free to just listen and enjoy. Although you have the words in front of you, and the melody is the same all the time, so if you decide you want to join in, feel free.
Or if you want to write another verse and bring it to us next time.
The thing about the spoke process, there's always another verse. So we don't have all the verses here. But
yeah, well, you probably have about 18 verses. I shortened it.
Can we pick them? Oh, and in the thing, there's a really cute animation done too. If you want to check it out from 1963 in the link. I sat down one evening in a timber town cafe. A 6'7" waitress to me these words did say, I see you are a logger and not a common bum, for no one but a logger stirs his coffee with his thumb. My lover was a logger, there's none like him today. If you'd sprinkle whiskey on it, he'd eat a bale of hay. He never shaved the whiskers from off his horny hide. He'd pound them in with a hammer and bite them off inside. My lover came to see me one freezing winter day. He held me in a fond embrace that broke 3 vertebrae. He kissed me when we parted, so hard it broke my jaw, and I could not speak to tell him he forgot his mackinaw. I watched my logger lover going out through the snow, a sauntering gaily homeward at 48 below.
she's beloved in the Pacific Northwest folk scene. She's actually from British Columbia, just barely outside of the Washington border, but all these lands and waters got shared around at the time and still do anyway. So Linda is another writer who found herself writing a lot of labor and union songs after high school. Right out of high school, she got a job in a cannery in Richmond, BC. She was like, this is terrible. And then she went to college and she took some sort of like business management class, and the things that they were teaching at the time, probably the 60s or 70s. She was like, this is horrible. This is not ethical practices of how to treat humans who are doing a job for you. And I chose this song for this theme, the lands and waters theme, because it is such a lament. It is a worker's song. It's a labor song. But it is more about, to me, the absence of nature. Because you're stuck inside a factory, the smell is overwhelming, the noise is overwhelming, there's nothing natural about your environment, and all you can do is stare out the window and wish you were somewhere else where you can just be a creature. Not have to answer to a boss when you're some kind of. So this song's called Canning Salmon and is a beloved labor song. And here's how the chorus goes. High is the smell, low is the pay, long are the hours, why do we stay? Try that. High is the smell, low is the pay, long are the hours, why do we stay? Let the next part goes. Somewhere outside, a whole summer slips away, while we're stuck in here canning salmon. Somewhere outside, a whole summer slips away, while we're stuck in here canning salmon. Guys on the dock lays around, raise the forklift, and sass the floor lady till it's time for their tea. And they sit at the table by the window that opens and get paid $1 more an hour than me. High is the smell, low is the pay, long are the hours, why do we stay? Somewhere outside, a whole summer slips away, while we're stuck in here canning salmon. The machinery's so loud that they say we've gone canned up. Our shift is long over before we can hear, but they keep the noise level just under the limit, so they won't have to buy us the right safety gear. High is the smell, low is the pay, long are the hours, why do we stay? Somewhere outside, a whole summer slips away, while we're stuck in here canning salmon. First we can spring so heavy our arms ache, then we do sawhide if we pack with these. Then we do pigs that are mashed up and rotten, so they're packed up in pound tins and shipped out with ease. High is the smell, low is the pay, long are the hours, why do we stay? Somewhere outside, a whole summer slips away, while we're stuck in here canning salmon.
residents go up to work in fisheries and stuff in the summer, so I think that it still counts.
Thanks.
Yeah.
We made our own rules.
Yeah. Okay. This one, so this is funny because this one still counts also. This is an ancient song that has gone through the folk process. Who knows what the folk process is? Yeah!
It's a real thing. It's not something we made up.
We did not make this up. The folk process, so I actually have the definition. It is the way folk material, especially stories, music, and other arts, is transformed and readapted in the process of its transmission from person to person and from generation to generation. For example, Bob Nelson, the author of that song, gave me the chords that he wrote. And as we were playing through it, I was like, no, we're doing this chord. And I was like, I'll tell Bob, he'll be fine. That's the folk process. This song, the next song we will be singing, is called Acres of Clams. It is, if you look at the map, Ivor Haglund. Okay, who knows who Ivor Haglund was? We've got a couple hands now. Ivor Haglund, who's been to the Ivor's restaurant? Yeah. Okay, now we know. Okay, Ivor Haglund was a restaurateur, but before that, and during that, and in spite of that, he was a folk musician. And he wrote a ton of songs. He had, if you look at the book here, there's the 1953 book of ballads that he wrote, front and back, and then he also republished one in like 87 or 84. So those are the two covers of his books. But he was also just really into this. You can see there's a placemat here from, I don't know, the 40s that has the old settler lyrics. So let's talk about this song. It's gone through the folk process like crazy. It goes all the way back to the British Isles. The first record of the lyrics and melody being called The Gentle Maiden in the 17th century. And there is obviously it's not from the 17th century because it's a YouTube video, but there is a YouTube link in the Google Drive if you want to hear The Gentle Maiden. Then I told you it was a comedy show. You might have actually heard this song more recently as Rosin the Bow, which is a song from Ireland that, same melody, different lyrics. It's about a rogue fiddle player. And a lot of like rowdy Irish folk bands still play that song. And that song actually went through the folk process itself, and a lot of early U.S. presidential campaigns used that melody to write, campaign songs for these presidents. So that's a pretty cool history of the old settler. Or Rosin the Bow, sorry. Then in that was in the 1800s. Then around 1874 is the first mention. There was a publication that said, we've had a lot of requests for this song, so we're going to publish it here for everybody. So it's the first time anybody has written record of it. That does not mean that this song is different. We don't necessarily know when or how, but the person who rewrote the words to be the old settler was a guy named Francis Henry, and all we know is he was somewhere in Pierce County, so I put the pin in Tacoma. Who knows where that was? So around 1874, the old settler is same melody, right? But now our lyrics are about settling in logging country in Washington State. Right, okay, we're getting there. So, but this is what I'm saying, is like the songs are so weird with history, right? Alright, so then Ivor Haglund, his folk musician, comes along, finds this cool song called The Old Settler, puts it on a placemat, and then in 1944, yes, 40 something, 44 is the first record we have of it again, where he did a radio show called Across the Sound, and he made this song his theme song for that show. And you can actually hear him singing it in that link at the top there, the PacificNorthwestFolklore.org. The Mohai Museum in Seattle recently did a whole hour-long thing about Ivor Haglund and his folk music. If you're interested, that's online too. Anyway, so Ivor decided he needed a few words about clams in there, because obviously, and now the song is called Acres of Clams. You might have heard this song, The Old Settler, or Acres of Clams, and usually now it's kind of one and the same. You'll usually hear Ivor's verses about clams in the old settler. Do you want to do one after every, we have time?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a, I just, for another project, I've gotten a couple copies of the Waltleys songbook. And one of their instructions in the introduction is sing the chorus after every verse, because people want to sing along. Are you guys having fun singing along?
Yeah, okay. Some people were really enthusiastic and some were like, sure. Okay. Okay, so the way this works with the chorus, we have a verse, and then there's the last two lines of the verse, right? So you're going to repeat the last two lines of the verse, right? Oh, this is hard.
It'll make more sense if we demonstrate.
Okay, want to do the first verse and the chorus, and then we'll repeat the chorus so you guys can sing along. Does that sound good? Yeah. Okay. All right, here we go. Okay. I feel loud.
Is she loud?
No. No, it's okay. Fine. I'm fine. My mom would disagree with that. Here we go. I've traveled all over this country, prospecting and digging for gold. I've tunneled, hydraulicked, and cradled, and I have been frequently sold. You're going to repeat that. And I have been frequently sold. And I have been frequently sold. And I have been frequently sold. And I've tunneled, hydraulicked, and cradled, and I have been frequently sold. You gotta get how that works? Yeah? We're gonna start at the very top. We're gonna try again. Everybody ready? Yeah, very top. So you know what you're listening for now. I've traveled all over this country, prospecting and digging for gold. I've tunneled, hydraulicked, and cradled, and I have been frequently sold. And I have been frequently sold. And I have been frequently sold. I've traveled, hydraulicked, and cradled, and I have been frequently sold. You guys got it? So rolling my grub and my blankets, I left all my tools on the ground and started one morning to shake it to a country they call Puget Sound. To a country they call Puget Sound. A country they call Puget Sound. I started one morning to shake it to a country they call Puget Sound. I took up a claim in the forest and set myself down to hard toil. For 2 years I chopped and I labored, but never got down to the soil. But never got down to the soil. Never got down to the soil. For 2 years I chopped and I labored, but never got down to the soil. I tried to get out of this country, but poverty forced me to stay until I became an old settler. Now nothing can drive me away. Now nothing can drive me away. Now nothing can drive me away. Until I became an old settler. Now nothing can drive me away. And now that I'm used to the climate, I think that if man never found a place to be peaceful and quiet, that place is on Puget Sound. That place is on Puget Sound. That place is on Puget Sound. A place to be peaceful and quiet, that place is on Puget Sound. No longer the slave to ambition, I laugh at the world and its shams as I think of my happy
It comes from a larger word that goes mimetic, which is an adjective, and it is a field, it is a pseudoscience. It is the idea that ideas are alive and can propagate and spread and be processed and refined. So memes are kind of like this idea like, oh, if this travels and goes viral on the internet, that means everybody thought well of it, or enough people thought well of it that you saw it, you know. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Mimetics, been obsessed with them ever since I learned about it. All right, so Ron Konzak of Bainbridge Island. He makes harps. He's a luthier. He is a storyteller. He got into all sorts of historical societies and preservation societies. He was friends with two people named Judy and Jerry Elfindal, and they were all three just polymaths of varying things. Jerry is a geologist, and he was the curator of the Bainbridge Island Historical Society for a time, and a diver. And they all got together for some reason and decided that this would be a brilliant song to write. If you don't know it, don't feel bad. They've got you covered in Japan, where the gooey duck is a delicacy, and so is this song, apparently. So, this is called the gooey duck song, or the dig a duck song. I'm going to teach you the chorus. Is a bit of a tongue twister.
You
So
have to sing along. This
you have to sing along.
There's
There's
no
no
no's on this. I better see everybody trying. All right, I got this.
Hang on. Get my
That's okay.
changer here.
It's fun. You're gonna laugh. It's fun.
If you don't laugh, I will give you $1. It goes like this. Dig a duck, dig a duck, dig a gooey duck. Try that. Dig a duck, dig a duck, dig a gooey duck. Dig a duck, dig a gooey duck, dig a duck a day. Dig a duck, dig a gooey duck, dig a duck a day. Ready? Dig a duck, dig a duck, dig a gooey duck, dig a duck, dig a gooey duck, dig a duck a day. Hey! Dig a duck, dig a duck, dig a gooey duck, dig a duck, dig a gooey duck, dig a duck a day. Alright, here we go. You can hear the diggers say as they're heading for the bay. Oh, I gotta dig a duck, gotta dig a duck a day, 'cause I get a buck a duck. If I dig a duck a day, so I gotta dig a duck a day. Hey! Dig a duck, dig a duck, dig a gooey duck, dig a duck, dig a gooey duck, dig a duck a day. Dig a duck, dig a duck, dig a gooey duck, dig a duck, dig a gooey duck, dig a duck a day. Oh, it takes a lot of luck and a certain kind of pluck for to dig around the muck, for to get a gooey duck, for he doesn't have a front, and he doesn't have a back, and he doesn't go down, and he doesn't go quack. Dig a duck, dig a duck, dig a gooey duck, dig a duck, dig a gooey duck, dig a duck a day. Dig a duck, dig a duck, dig a gooey duck, dig a duck, dig a gooey duck, dig a duck a day. I see a bunch of you wanting to make $1. As they walk across the sand, nearly half a mile from land, for to dig a gooey duck, for to dig him out by hand. No, it isn't any trouble, and it doesn't take a shovel for to find a gooey duck found looking for a bubble. Dig a duck, dig a duck, dig a gooey duck, dig a duck, dig a gooey duck, dig a duck a day. Dig a duck, dig a duck, dig a gooey duck, dig a duck, dig a gooey duck, dig a duck a day. Dig a duck, dig a duck, dig a gooey duck, dig a duck, dig a gooey duck, dig a duck a day. Dig a duck, dig a duck, dig a gooey duck, dig a duck, dig a gooey duck, dig a duck a day.
I did it!
Thank you, family.
Thank you guys so much for having us.
Do you guys have any questions for us at all? We do have some time for questions.
After this appetizer, where are we going to see you play again?
Right here. For those of you who are like, oh man, these chicks are so great. You can see at least one of them on Sunday, right here on this stage with the Zonkey Jazz Band. The Lucky Lounge closed. So we had to move our regular monthly concert, and the Corbin Activity Senior Center was like, hey, come on over. And we're like, okay. So If you enjoy great jazz music inspired by New Orleans and horns and all that jazz, if you like swing dancing or watching swing dancers, this will be a good place to be on Sunday at 7 o'clock, I believe.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. Thanks, Paula. I don't know what I would do without Paula.
You don't either.
Big hand for dinner, by the way. Thank you so much.
Olivia and I are also presenting spooky songs and stories on KYRS on October 17th at 4 o'clock. So that'll be fun if you listen in to local radio. We'll be doing kind of what we did now, but with murder ballads and songs about monsters and ghosts or something.
This is something that Jacqui does every year, by the way.
I don't know when. I just kind of, it's funny because I met somebody brand new for the first time a couple weeks ago, and they were like, "So what are you doing for Halloween?" And I was like, "I guess I'm now known as the spooky song lady," which is fun. So, yeah, I'm fine with that. Do they have any questions about any of the program or anything? Go ahead.
Not a question.
Okay.
Maybe because of my age, there's not a single song in there that was not a pretty good part of my life, even though I came from IDO. But in my Northwest History class, I did play some songs from Woody Guthrie. This was in the beginning of the 50s, started the folk singing era.
Yeah.
And the protest songs, I met Utah Phillips. He came to one of my econ classes. And one of the points that I want to make, though, the folk singers, the protest singers, like Utah Phillips, Pete Seeger, and of course Woody Guthrie. Woody Guthrie talks about, well, this is the 1930s, which was a horrible period, especially for the poor. And he talks about riding the rods, that is, the train, which I have done myself, by the way, and
Sounds like we should
going through
interview you.
some places where the yard bulls, the police for the railroad shot people. All of those people, Pete Seeger, Woody Guthrie, and so forth, of course, were communists. This was quite common. Anybody who speaks up for the worker, for the oppressed, just go down to certain states and talk about equality and see what the hell happens. So it's still around. All of this has been a very important part of my life. I might just the last one, or the second last one, well, the last one I summered on Bainbridge Island. Was the happiest time I had as a kid. But at any rate, Hagelin, there's if you go divers, there's a wonderful lumen casting done by a very close friend of mine, Rich Byer from Seattle, and it's a Hagelin on the bench feeding these overgrown seagulls.
Yes.
And Rich always liked a bit of humor, and I won't go into all of it. That's why the seagulls were so big, and he said it was a very important part of his life. The reason was when he started feeding the seagulls, the city council said you can't do that. Well, he was a very powerful guy, and he said, you know, and did it anyway. And I used to, every time I'd go to Seattle, take kids with me, I'd go down there and let the kids feed the seagulls. Since you started with Grand Coulee Dam, there's a lot of history there. A lot of the people in Spokane did not want it. They were the gravity people.
That's why they hired Woody
This
Guthrie.
commie project by that communist president, Theodore, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. At any rate, there was quite a fight. It's history itself. So a lot of history, all of that, and all of these things are very important. I had a big part of my life was fighting for wilderness and preservation of our forest, and so I want to thank you.
Oh, thank you. I have a story when you said that. There's actually a picture of it online, but some of you might even remember when this happened, but maybe not. I don't know. It might have been in the 70s. I don't know. But yeah, so there was a rail crash down in downtown Seattle. You know what I'm going to say. He was a genius marketer. A railroad crashed and a bunch of oil went all over the rails, and he ran out of his restaurant with a photographer with a bunch. They were having a pancake bake, luckily, that day, and he ran out to the railroad and just put a bunch of oil on the pancakes and did a big photo shoot with it. You can still see those pictures online, but he did not care. He was a goofy guy, and he was very powerful, like you said. And yeah, interesting man, really. Anything else from anybody? Anyone want to add anything? Or no? Okay. Thank you all so very much.
Okay, I have never been entertained so delightfully. You guys are so charismatic and such fun. It's just been a kick in the pants. Thank you so much. So, the Westerners like to present our speakers or our entertainers or all of the above with a special thank you. And so we have put together a group of books that you would probably want to share. The first one is they're all the Pacific Northwesterner. This is the permanent legacy of Expo 74, an insider story of how Spokane acquired Riverfront Park, the Opera House, and the Convention Center by David Rogers. And you know that name. This is about the two Mrs. Facets, I think I'm pronouncing that right. Controversy, Scandal, and Social Change in Early Urban Spokane by Richard. And this is one of my favorites. It's called The Life of William H. Lewis, from Western stagecoach driver to law enforcement. And his legacy, he wore the first police uniform in Spokane. And we had the first uniformed police department, 1887. But there's some really gross stories in there. Out of Montana, because he was a stagecoach driver. He was the first person on the scene of Custer's battlefield looking for a new route for the stagecoach. And he saw something caught his eye, and it was a rifle barrel flute, which our museum has. Anyway, the next one is The Reverend David Blaine by Laura Arksey. From Spokane to the Klondike by our own Polly Kazmarek, and Yakima Cannet by John Ellingson. And John Ellingson was one of the original members of our Westerners, and I think he lived to be, what, 99? Something like that. Anyway, a lot of legacy, enjoy the history. Thank you for a wonderful